Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everybody. Jazakallah khair for attending our third episode of Imaan after Ramadan. We're going to give it perhaps another let's say 5 minutes, inshallah, so that people can still come up, inshallah, and then people can still join. We still have a few minutes before we start, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني ويفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of Iman after Ramadan. Jazakallah khair to everybody who's been attending for the last 2 weeks. Alhamdulillah, it's been a great success so far. We've had absolutely a fantastic turnout, and I hope everyone has taken something away from this, inshallah. This week is also going to be another really exciting topic, inshallah. And today we are talking about Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, which means command to do good and forbid the evil. Inshallah, that sounds like a very broad topic, but inshallah, our sister today who will be joining us and speaking to us will hopefully try and pick out the key things about this that we need to take away from it. What does this verse or what does this quote actually mean? What does it tell us to do? Inshallah, joining us today, we have Sister Raghad Al-Itriki, alhamdulillah. I think I've said that surname wrong. I apologize if I haven't. And just a bit of background of Sister Raghad. She is the president of the Muslim Association of Britain. She's active on Muslim women and youth issues. She's a public speaker and has led many discussions with politicians and decision makers on Islamophobia and other issues of concern to Muslims in the UK. She is engaged with the European Forum of Muslim Women and European Council for Muslims and has addressed the European Parliament on the discrimination against Muslim women. MashaAllah, it's a fantastic honor, and it's such a huge privilege to have Sister Raghad join us today in her very busy schedule. We should all be very appreciative, alhamdulillah, that she's joined us. And inshallah, may we all learn something from her and gain something from the session that we have today. Just a few ground rules, inshallah. We will do a Q&A right at the end where we will have opportunities for you to speak, ask questions through the chat box, or I will unmute you, inshallah. So please hold your questions until the very end, and inshallah we can have a Q&A after the session has been conducted. So without further ado, inshallah, Raghad, I've unmuted you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, thank you for the introduction, and the pleasure is mine. It's really nice to be amongst my sisters today. And of course, we have collaborated with UCAM Sisters and UCAM Youth in the past. So this is not the first time that we come together, and that is exactly what we are meant to do, to support each other, to collaborate on goodness, inshallah. And I think part of what we're going to discuss today, al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa-nahy anil munkar, is coming together and joining forces in order to enable that. So do you want me to start with the topic, or are you going to say something before?
No, the floor is all yours, inshallah. Go full steam ahead, it's all yours.
Okay, so Jazakumullah khair. First of all, I would like to welcome and greet my sisters who are watching this and joining us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you amongst those who are blessed, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this gathering and make it one that is mentioned in the high ranks amongst the angels and in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I thank you all for attending, or organizing, even the organizers for organizing such an event. And I think this is very important, such a series, especially after the dip that happens in spirituality and the post-Ramadan blues that happens after such a spiritual and intense time, especially with the pandemic that we have lived through. And Ramadan has been very different, very intense, very individual and intimate into our homes, which might have made people truly, as I've heard from others, feel the impact of Ramadan in their lives, and inshallah carry the good practices or habits that they've learned in this important month forward. And I think this series come as an attempt from the organizers to continue to benefit from what we've learned during the month of Ramadan, and to I think emphasize on important let's say habits or teachings or rules in our faith, to be able to be amongst those who lead, to be able to be amongst those who are exemplary examples for the Muslim community, and to be able to to guide those in even wider society, because we never limit the benefit to ourselves as a closed Muslim community, but rather we are here to engage with the wider society and be means of their guidance, bi'idhnillah. Now, I'm going to mention, inshallah, the verse that we're going to discuss today. And I think it's one of the most important. I mean, all verses are very important, and all verses you could take many lessons, but the main thing is when you read verses is for it to have an impact in your practices and in the way you conduct yourself as a Muslim. And that is when Islam becomes activated in your heart, activated through your limbs, through your tongue, through your eyes. And I think it's very important to realize that it's not enough just to read the verses of Quran or to even memorize. The main thing is to translate it to action. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ was a Quran that was walking, and even in companions, they used to learn one verse at a time to be able to act upon it. And inshallah, today the verse that we are going to take is directly linked to our topic today, which is inviting to goodness and forbidding evil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. So this is a direct order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking or requesting or ordering, prescribing upon people, let there be amongst you people that invite to the good, enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong. And those are the successful ones. So who doesn't want success? We're all striving to be successful individuals in all areas of our life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a recipe for success in this life and inshallah in the hereafter as well. And that is to always enjoin and invite people to goodness, and always forbid and move people away from evil and wrongdoing. Those are the successful ones. So when we read those verses, we have to analyze, we have to come with a recipe that we could use in our daily lives. This is one equation, this is one recipe. Successful equals, for those of you who like maths or a bit of physics even, a successful individual, a successful Muslim, I will link it even to faith, Muslim individual, is one who invites to goodness and forbid evil, right? So these two ingredients will lead to us being successful. And subhanallah, throughout the Quran and throughout the many verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah the Almighty, mentions many attributes of the believers. But one of them that keeps coming up is that they enjoin good and forbid evil. And we could visit many verses. I will list some of them apart from this, because at the end of the day, what I'm saying is all derived from what the teachings of Islam, and our main sources is the Quran and the Sunnah. So whatever I say today is nothing compared to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us. It's all derived from that, from the main source. So I like to bring in the main source in my topic. So for you to reflect on the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. And some people differ about kuntum. Here it says, you are the best nation produced for mankind. But the condition is that you enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for you to be, we sometimes say, oh, Allah chose us Muslims as the best of nations. But that comes with a condition. And it's very important to remember the condition. So you enjoin what is right, and you forbid what is wrong, and you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for you to know that these three will lead to you being amongst the best of nations, or those three conditions, if they were fulfilled, then the result of being the best of nations happen. And without them, you're not. You could be the lowest. Because one would ask, so why are our so-called Muslim nations, in a bad state? If Allah promised that, with no conditions, then we ought to be the best of nations. But that doesn't happen unless we fulfill those three conditions. And that is very important to do. And you might start thinking, okay, so what can I, a poor individual, a sister in the UK, how can I do that? It's hard work. It's the work of countries, governments, groups, organizations, but me as an individual. And I'm telling you, it all starts with an individual. It all starts with your heart, with your soul, with your intention to enable this in yourself, to always look to enjoin, to direct, to indicate to people what is good, and to forbid and to prevent wrongdoing. It's always in ourselves first, because remember, we're humans, and humans are, subhanallah, they ought to do mistakes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that we are amongst the people who commit mistakes, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always encouraged us to come back to Him, to ask for forgiveness continuously, no matter how big we think our mistakes are. It's always, there's always a way back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if one is sincere in the way they come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously it's going to be as if it never happened. So you have that kind of forgiveness, and therefore it is always very important for us to feel empowered, Because once we feel we're weak, we cannot do much. That is when you're truly going to fall into the belief of that nothing is in your hand. You cannot change anything. And obviously, the things that each one of us can change is different than what a government can change and what an organization can change. I know that, and I acknowledge that fact. But that doesn't make you powerless. Because believe me, you are the core of this ummah. You are the core of organizations and governments and countries. You're the one who, the change that happens within you and then affects the family that you're in, and then the community that you're in, it will have a ripple effect. And if you think about the pandemic that just happened now, 3 months ago, how did that start? A disaster, a catastrophe, subhanAllah. We're all inflicted by it. It started with one person. It started with a person which spread it to others. And that is what we're trying to prevent, you know, the contagious effect of this disease or of this virus. So what happened is the ripple effect reached everywhere in the world, maybe. So the same thing with, you should think of ordering good and preventing evil in the same light, that your actions will have a ripple effect and you don't know how far it will reach. And many stories in the Quran, subhanallah, tells us about people who maybe even, and it's very clear in the story of Ashab al-Kahf, the people of the cave, or the young people of the cave, who escaped the tyrant king of their time because they worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he was opposing them and oppressing them. So they decided to escape their country, their people, and protect their faith. And they did so, and they went into the cave. And I think all of you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them sleep for more than 300 years, and then they woke up. Now, part of what you learn from the story, there's many lessons to be learned from that stories, but part of what you learn is, subhanallah, if they died for real and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't bring them back, we wouldn't have seen the chapter that follows, that the village that they left, which was in a denial situation where it was all, against belief, against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turned into believers. And the tyrant king passed away and died, and people came into Islam. So the result of their actions, because people kept remembering those who escaped for their faith and how it empowered those who stayed in the village, and they returned to the religion, the impact of their actions was far-reaching. So sometimes we won't see what the impact of our actions. Sometimes it's going to be sometime down 2-3 generations. And we are the result of many generations that persevered and stuck to their religion. We are the result of those people who, for example, protected the way that hadith arrived to us and protected the many sources of knowledge. I mean, remember that the Prophet ﷺ mentions us as his beloved. He says, I missed my beloved. And the companions say, oh ya Rasulullah, aren't we your beloved? And he said, no, you're my companions. The beloved are the people who come after me and believe in me without even seeing me. So it takes continuity for whatever you've done to reach. And you should have that intention. You should always think of your actions as powerful actions that are going to lead to the change of hearts and souls of others. Once you gear yourself for success, that is the first step to success. So once you have empowered yourself and you think, inshallah, I am a person who can influence, who can affect in whatever role I play, as a mother, as a daughter, as a leader of a circle, as a person who's working in an organization, as a member of society. There's always something that you can do. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly the situations that you're going to be able to enjoin into al-amr bil ma'ruf or al-nahy anil munkar. But what we can do is to understand, first of all, that this is, as we just explained, is one important ingredient, and almost the sixth pillar. Some of them called it the sixth pillar of our faith. I mean, we have 5, but if you were to add a 6th pillar, it would have been al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. And through the different verses that we could read again and again, it always indicates that we are people who enjoin in what is right and forbid what is wrong. And that is even mentioned in the surah that we all know, which is Surah Al-Asr. Al-Asr is a surah that is most of our children love, and it is a surah that we end our meetings and gatherings, remind each other by the important meanings that it has. And here I'm going to quickly just bring about the meanings in Surah Al-Asr. For those of you, I'm sure everyone knows it, but it's good. وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. It's good for us to be reminded of the treasures that we use on a daily basis, and sometimes don't delve deep enough for us to be reminded of what we're saying and what we're doing. And in Surah Al-Asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by the passing time, indeed man is at loss, for he is losing his valuable lifetime, except for those who believe and do good deeds, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another in patience. So it's very important for us to know that we encourage each other in both, seeking truth and in patience. So in these verses, the conditions are to have Iman, faith, to perform good deeds, and to encourage one another to truth, and to encourage one another to patience. Okay, so I am sure that there is no doubt in any mind that should we should we invite to goodness? Is it our duty? But sometimes, because of what's been happening lately, even amongst the Muslim community, we start doubting that this is a role we should play. And why? People these days tend to say, well, that's not my problem. Don't be nosy. This is something between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and leave me alone. And sometimes I must admit that the way that al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar happens can be done in a way that pushes people away. And that's the worst thing. And the main thing is, when the prophets were ordered to deliver a message, they were ordered to deliver al-balagh al-mubin. Al-balagh is the message. Al-mubin is the clear, in the best way possible. Then they're not responsible if people follow or not. You're never responsible for the actions of the people you tell, but you are responsible for delivering a message and delivering it in the best of ability in terms of tools, in terms of language, style. That's something for you to work on. And then there's degrees of al-amr bil ma'ruf wal nahy anil munkar that you can practice. So, for example, many of us feel that my actions are my actions, and the actions of people are something that they are responsible for, and it is true. But if it's going to destroy many others, then I have a responsibility in at least changing something. And we all know the famous hadith, the Prophet saying, peace and blessings be upon him, said, whoever among you sees an evil action, let him change it with his hand, which means by taking action. And if he cannot, then with his tongue, by speaking against it. And if he cannot, then with his heart, by feeling at least that you want to change it. And that's the weakest of faith. That's the weakest of Iman. Nowadays, what we're doing, we're resorting to the weakest of faith at all times. So we no longer use our hand. We no longer use our tongues. All we do is in our heart, we don't do it. And that should be done. The heart feeling that this is wrong is only done when you have no other choice. So that is something that is very important, that we, if we have other means of action, then we should use them first. And another thing is because we live in a society where this is, you know, leave me alone. You have no right to tell me what to do, especially amongst the new generation. And here I'm talking about the Muslim community. Of course, the wider society, it's even more difficult to do that. But sometimes we look at it in a negative context. So what we see is someone who is rigid, who is telling people off, who is ordering people to do things. And that is not al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar. You're losing your chances at doing that. As we said, the best way, and the person who does it should have a good set, or the best of characters, actually, not a good set, the best of character in reaching out to people and in knowing the keys to people's hearts, how to introduce what you're saying. And it might be in phases, it might not come all at once, but at least you take action. At least you think of the problem. You identify what would you like to change and why do you want to change it. You've got to know your objective and what are the means that you're going to take in order to achieve your objective or achieve your aim. And I think it's very important for us to realize, even those who, because there are people who say, you know, I don't like it when someone comes to me and tells me, you know, you're, for example, and I've seen this so many times, for example, in a mosque, someone who's, let's say, wearing jeans and t-shirts, and because I work with a long shirt, I work with a lot of young ladies, so they come to me and they hate the adults, especially the sisters who come to them and say, you shouldn't be putting this on, you shouldn't be wearing that. And in their mind, they hate al-amr bil-ma'ruf because we have distorted it. We have made it an action that we tell people off. It's almost like telling people off. Even if people who've gone to Hajj, and there's Hayat al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy 'anil Munkar, this committee for al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahy 'anil Munkar, they've given themselves a bad name, to the point that what's taking place in Saudi partly is due to the way that they have presented themselves in the past. I lived in Saudi and I remember them coming with sticks and hitting people and telling them, don't wear this, cover your face, do that. And that is not the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us or has ordered us to do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar. In actual fact, it just gives you a negative image, and it makes you, you know, go the other way. And I've seen many people, by the way, just leave. They had a bit of faith, they had a bit of goodness in them, and because of the situations that they have been in, they decided, you know what, I don't want any of this. And we push them to the point that they leave the whole faith so no one can talk about them. And that is dangerous. That is dangerous, that we, with our good intentions, trying to advise them, push them away from us. And maybe push them to a point that there's no coming back. And then we will be responsible for that loss that has happened. And therefore, first of all, you've got to see the priorities of whatever situation you feel that you need to invite to goodness, or order goodness, or forbid evil. You have to know your aim. It has to be clear. And you have to see the positive ways that you can implement your plan. You've got to have a little plan, and it might be little. So for example, with my child is choosing to do something bad. Even in that situation, I can, of course, say, hey, I'm your mother and you've got to listen to me. I can choose that approach, but it's not going to last. The child is going to grow up and they're going to do what they want, and you will have nothing to say. Maybe you can control them while they're young, but you don't know what's happening in the background. But having a plan where it invites them, it encourages them to join into goodness, and where it grows into them the hate for evil. And that happens in, first of all, a gradual manner that can make those results and those achievements permanent ones. So it's not just going to happen in this hour and then behind your back it's going to turn against you. And maybe this al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar is going to take years of your life. So you don't imagine instant results. So for example, all the content on media, should include amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Even in producing our work and documentaries and talk, part of this is al-amr bil ma'ruf, is inviting to goodness. Goodness, by the way, is what? Goodness is even our faith, Islam. We believe that Islam holds a lot of goodness and holds all goodness, in fact. And we believe that the message of inviting to Islam is the ultimate message. But under that invitation comes many more little steps that could be geared towards our Muslim community, Muslim sisters, Muslim brothers, youth, and wider society as well. So you might think, how am I going to invite a non-Muslim to do good? You might think of, am I going to say, hey, become a Muslim? I think you should become a Muslim. And if you said that, would it ever bring would it achieve anything? It might actually push them away. So inviting to goodness could include good manners. Could be, for example, pushing evil. We have many sisters, many brothers working on committees to do with sexual education for our children in schools. And that is part, engaging with those organizations, having a say in whatever we have been given as something that we are expected to do, having a say in discussing and in directing towards dangers. All of this comes under al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. And I think it's very important also to understand that, and I'm talking today in the capacity of an individual, because I'm sure most of our Muslim organizations, and UKIM and MAB, Muslim Association Britain, share a lot of common ground where we agree on the common good between our organizations. And we know that the objectives that we have is to be of benefit to ourselves as individuals, as organizations, and to be of benefit to wider society. We as Muslim organizations are directing all our projects to create strong individuals, Muslim individuals, to be of benefit to their communities, to their families, and to be strong Muslims in themselves, to be able to extend the benefit to wider society. So that is very important for us to do. But today, as an individual, I'm speaking in that capacity because I think most of the sisters would want to know, what can I do? One of the basic things, and especially if we've got a youth amongst us, is to know that your actions, your own actions, are an invitation to goodness and shows that it's dangerous to go and do something wrong. And I know it sounds okay, that's a very simple action, but it has a great impact on those around you, because people do watch actions more than they listen to words, and they want to see actions. And the problem is, many people say good things, but when you come to their actions, it's totally not there. And we know that it's very important to follow your sayings by your actions. So for example, when you do something, you can't and I've heard this from knowledgeable people, by the way, knowledgeable sisters as well. For example, when you tell them, but be careful, you're influencing the youth, you're having an effect on them. They say, that's not in my hand, it's up to them, their parents should control them. They should have a mind of their own, and they shouldn't follow actions. And here I just want to draw attention to an important ayah in Surah An-Nahl, which says, لِيَحْمِلُوا أَوْزَارَهُمْ كَامِلَةً يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَمِنْ أَوْزَارِ الَّذِينَ يُضِلُّونَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. So this talks about those who influence people and direct them with their actions, with their followers, with the following, the followers that they have, with their influence, to something bad. So for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this verse, for what the meaning of it, for what they have said or what they have done, they will carry all their sins, their own sins, fully, and some of the sins of those who they misguide through their actions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fair and just even with those who are misguided, because what He does, He doesn't give them all the sins of those who they misguided, but some in the area of what they have misguided them on. So, when you remember that on Judgment Day you will come, la samahallah, inshallah, none of us, but someone would come with the sins of those they led to their misguidance through their actions, through the things they say. And why I say this, because there's a lot of corruption or misguidance happening on social platforms such as, and that is where our youth are engaged in, such as Instagram. Facebook is a bit older for the younger generation, Snapchat. All those platforms are always, our youth are drawn to those influencers who might move away. And some of them, I'm talking about the Muslims amongst us, I'm not talking about non-Muslims, move away from what is good, and might cause the misguidance of those individuals who are who might follow an evil path or move away from Islam. So it's very important to know that your impact starts with your own sayings, your own words, and your own actions. And then you don't just think about situations where there's negativity. So you've got to forbid evil. You've got to say, no, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be in that situation. That is, I think, even the last resort that you should use. I think what you should do is to think in a proactive manner, how to engage proactively in bringing about a positive image to make people want to do good, for people to realize the importance of working together on goodness and how it's going to affect them in themselves and their communities and wider society. So I think it's very important for us to try to think of innovative ways, especially the youth, because and I always say the youth, because the youth have they always like to think outside the box. They always bring to our tables, especially those the ones us, we have been here for a while, so maybe we're just fixed in the way we think, but then they speak out and they bring something new to the table, and we need to engage with them in bringing innovative ways of carrying out projects that would bring people together for a good outcome, for a good effect. And I think that is something that we all need to be thinking about and making it one of our main projects within organizations. The youth, for example, they have such a big responsibility upon their shoulders of how to bring back the youth that are being attracted to many different ways. What project will invite them to goodness? And because we are organizations, and I'm heading an organization that day and night thinks of projects that will bring people together and show them that we can have a positive impact, and not continuing in the path of defending ourselves or rejecting the accusations that we as a Muslim community are accused of day and night. And maybe there's a way where we could show a bright picture, and that would be inviting for people to goodness and to work on goodness. And mashallah, I've seen, for example, the youth in under our organization. I am seeing some amazing projects that are coming and bringing those who are maybe far away to them. This is exactly al-amr bil ma'ruf. This is exactly inviting people to join on goodness. This is exactly inviting people in coming together on a common goal that will serve their faith, bringing people closer to their faith. So if we were to explore this outside the context of an order to do good and an order to not do bad, then there's many areas that we could start working on. And I'm sure that while you're listening to this, many situations comes to mind. As I said, it is very important for us to, first of all, fine-tune our characteristics, our mannerism. the way we deal with others. And not everyone is suitable for that, by the way. I've seen people who tend to say things that would harm the person in front of them. And I said it sometimes to the point of them leaving and never coming back. I was in Leeds Grand Mosque. I was a part of the management committee. And I remember because ladies wanted the musalla to be totally quiet. They didn't want any child to cry, and which is very strange in my view, because if our children don't grow in masajid, and I understand there has to be a level of maintenance for the sound, but then what about the mother that has children and she herself wants to do it every now and then, as long as it's not causing disruption, continuous disruption. But anyway, this woman who came, she seemed like she was a new member. And mashallah, Leeds Grand Mosque, if anyone knows it, is known for their large community. There's many languages, I think over 30 languages spoken there. It is very mixed race, which is a beautiful example for a mosque, and that is the way, honestly, our mosque should be. So this woman walks in, and then suddenly her child cried while she was in prayers, and suddenly, as soon as we did Salamu Alaikum, Assalamu Alaikum, this woman burst out, shouting and screaming at her. This new member burst out in tears, and she cried, and she carried her baby, and she ran out. So I followed her, because the way it was done was awful, to be honest. If she was doing Amr bil Ma'ruf, she thought she was. The woman is, she's mashallah a knowledgeable woman in terms of religion, but obviously she didn't know how to translate that into action. She told her, you shouldn't be doing this, you're harming people, you're harming the musallis. I ran after this woman, and this was the first time, she was a non-hijabi, and this was the first time her husband convinced her to come to the mosque and that she will find a nice atmosphere in the mosque. This woman said, I will never ever return to the mosque. I advised her and I said, listen, this is only a single person and it's not like that, and inshallah we'll find you, but I don't know what's happened to her. But imagine if she never walked into a mosque again. Imagine that. And this woman satisfied that she has carried out an act of Amr bil Ma'ruf. That is absolutely devastating, and we should learn that our manners is what makes people listen to us or shut us up, and they don't even want to listen. And mostly the youth, when they say, you have no right to speak to me like that, and you have no right to comment on me, it's because of a previous mindset that we are rigid in our Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. We do it in an ordering manner that does not allow any kind of discussion or convincing, and that pushes them off. So the tool that they use is, just leave me alone. If you don't like it, just don't look at it. And at the end of the day, sometimes we have to do that, so we try to assess the situation. But as I said, if you can do forbid or order, then present examples and present projects that will engage. I'm aware of the time, and I want to leave time for the discussion. And I think through the discussion, mostly the engagement happens. So I'm going to end shortly. I wasn't told when to end, but I'm going to assume that inshallah there's only 20 minutes, so I want some engagement from the sisters. But it is very important for us to find projects where people will automatically be engaged in goodness and engaged in, such as what we're doing now. What we are doing now is enjoining on goodness and helping each other to be better at this tool, al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. To think before we utter something that's and weigh the positives and the negatives in what we say, because sometimes pushing away the negatives is better than bringing maslaha or goodness. This is fiqh, one of the fiqh, the ways, the rulings of Islam. If you know a situation, there's a benefit, but the disadvantages that will come out of it might outweigh the benefits, then don't do it. So you've got to think of that all the time. And you've got to never give up and never say, we can't say anything these days. They all tell us it's nothing to do with you. You can find situations within your household within your community in a positive manner, in a smiley manner, in an attractive manner. Al-Amr bil Ma'ruf is done in an attractive manner that brings people together, that makes people want to come and work with you and apply Al-Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar through the things that you do together, and not only through words. But this is something that is very important, shouldn't be neglected, and we should know that our success relies on it. We cannot say this is nothing to do with me. As long as I'm happy in my household, all the filth and all the corruption that's happening around me, I have no concern. Your children are growing in this world, your grandchildren and the generations to come. Okay, we are responsible in the tiniest of ways, or each according to their abilities and their capacities and the areas of their work. Even if you were to walk, and as I was introduced, I've worked with many politicians and decision makers, and we've spoken about many issues. Now you might think, okay, so did they change anything? Some people would say, what did that achieve? And I am like, I'm following the same guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to his prophets. He said, وَمَا عَلَيْكَ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. You can only deliver the message. فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ عَلَى نَفْسِكَ. Maybe you are burdened by them not being convinced by the message. That is not your duty. Your role is not to burden yourself if they were not convinced. Your role is to deliver. And this is our role in this life, to keep delivering in the best of ways, in the most beautiful way. And when I discuss, it is to bring goodness to everyone, not only in an Islamic way, but in everything, in every aspect, to prevent evil from spreading evil even. So that is an important area that we should not neglect. Talking to those who we feel they're not going to listen to us, but at least I'm doing my job. I'm discussing, I'm putting my points of view across. I'm telling them, my sisters, the Muslim community feels that what you're saying and what you're doing in attacking them is causing harm. So all of those things that you're doing are regarded or counted in Al-Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. I will stop here because I'm wary of the time. So I will leave whoever wants to come in to maybe ask the sisters for any questions or discussions.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Raghad. That was so, I think that was just so practical and so applicable. I mean, I work personally very closely with the youth, and I think that is something that I've taken so much from that. So Jazakallah, and I'm sure everyone else who's been listening has as well. So really, Jazakallah khair for putting that perspective into Amr bil Ma'ruf, because often we don't think about it in that way. So really, Jazakallah. We do have a hand up. Let's have a look, inshallah. Right, Sister Amal is here. Okay, Amal, I've unmuted you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah khair, sister, for that really, really great talk. I also learned so much, and I really just love the way you made everything really practical, and it was a really, really unique way of looking at the topic. But I think, like, for myself, I currently do a little bit of youth work in my local masjid as well. And you mentioned, like, you can try and do projects to encourage the girls to Islam rather than just telling them, this is right, this is wrong, this is what you should do, and this is what you shouldn't. I just wondered if you had any, like, examples of those type of projects that maybe I could start up.
Okay. This is a very important question, especially that the youth differ in terms of them liking practical more than theory. And this is something we have to realize, because when you realize the specification of the characteristics of your audience, then you will be able to cater accordingly. And I think one of the most important work we can do is with youth, because the youth are faced with so many endless challenges, especially in the current time and the current atmosphere. And that is why I applaud you and I think Sakina. I think Sakina. Samar, sorry, yes, Samar.
Okay.
Sakina and Samar, nice meanings. So anyway, so I applaud you all because honestly, you're working in an area that will impact generations to come. These are the future mothers, and if you've got young boys, fathers, that will carry on the message. And when we talk about projects, the first thing, the first seed, I've noticed with so many, because I'm someone who, since I was 18, I was working with circles, young children's circles. And until this day, my daughter, who's 14, I have a circle for them. And I've done it for all my daughters. So the most important thing, because I've noticed along my time, many youth are strong and then they leave. They take off their hijab, they leave faith totally, they go against their faith. And I started to notice that the problem is in the foundations of their belief, in the foundations of how they were brought to this goodness. And it is something to do with their creed, with their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you were to create a good bond that will enjoin them onto good, you've got to take care of the foundations of this good bond, which is their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is the goodness that they're enjoining towards. So I think special care should be given, and according to the different ages, children below 8 is different than children above 11, and then teenagers. You've got to be very careful with who are you dealing with, and you can even ask for help. What do you think? What kind of syllabus would help them in that? And practical projects are immensely important in terms of, for example, engaging them to come on social projects. For example, I had a group of children who wanted to, they weren't really religious or anything, but they just felt like, because I brought them together, I told them we're going to do something practical. They were excited and they loved it when I took them to social projects such as soup kitchens. They loved it. They just felt they're doing something good. And if you grow in their hearts the feeling of let's do something good, then it continues, the satisfaction that they get after the project continues to feed on that. So if we were to talk about Ramadan projects and what could they have done, I mean, I'm in the youth, we're talking about 16 plus, so that's a bit older. They came on creating their own journals, creating their own media even. I've got children who worked on something of how did we deal with the extra time under the lockdown. And they're children from age 12 to 15, but beautiful ideas, beautiful. When you empower them, they come up with the best of projects. Just have in your mind what kind of practical projects engaging into society as well, not taking them away from society. The worst thing we could do is to separate them and create surround them with a bubble that they don't belong anymore. It's how to be productive. Spoken word, and I know many sisters who have brought this through spoken word. They engage in their minds and in their skills and according to what they want. But I would say, if you were to say what kind of projects, talk to them. Tell them what would you like to do, because they will be enthusiastic about the things that they suggest. Take it from there. Take 1 or 2 projects and say, okay, how can we grow this? And if you need any help, I mean, we could extend, if our experience will be of any help to you, we could extend and we could provide you, inshallah, with suggestions and the things that we have done. Maybe it will be of benefit, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair for that. I hope that answers the question, alhamdulillah. Okay, we've got Sister Sadia with a hand up. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sadia, I've unmuted you.
Yes, Jazakallah khair and Samar, and Jazakallah khair, Sister Ragid. It was lovely listening to all the ideas, and mashallah, how you have encouraged our, sisters for having some projects, and I also agree with you that collaboration in this specific task, which is a mutual task for Ummah, But my question was that we see that, of course, you talked about the youth and how to develop this concept in them. But we see for a larger portion of Ummah, be we are living in this country or anywhere, even in Muslim countries also, people are unaware of this major, farida, which is on us as the Ummah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And mostly people do not give it a priority as their, mission of life. So what do you think, living in Britain, how can we, especially with the sisters, we think like our responsibility towards our household and our general responsibility towards our families, they are preceding this duty, even if it is within the sisterhood, within the sisters?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, you're right in terms of the situation of the Ummah, and if you look at our countries and the corruption and the oppression that is happening even around the world, and you can all follow the events that are unfolding around George Floyd and the oppression that he has been, exposed to, where he was murdered, and then it took people to start changing, and the statues that has been toppled. Something good out of this is that evil never continues. And subhanallah, another thing is that there's always going to be people amongst us who are going to call for the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if they're little. But subhanallah, if this is going to be a sunnah al-hayah, and there's always going to be those who are going to call for a message, even if they're small in numbers. And that is something that should give us comfort, alhamdulillah, that this is going to continue. If not, then I don't think it would have reached us, and we wouldn't have, inshallah, been pushing to reach others. Now, let me tell you that not everyone is suitable to do al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. That is something that we should realize as well. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar needs knowledge. So you have to understand what you're asking people to do. So, for example, if you saw someone, let's say, in their food, in their the way they pray, different than you, and you have no knowledge of the different school of thoughts in fiqh, and you come to the person and say, what you're doing is wrong, you should do it, you might be wrong. So don't advise on something that you are not absolutely sure about. For example, drinking alcohol, everyone is certain that this is not allowed. So this is something we can all tackle, but you cannot tackle on something that you think you have knowledge of, because you might be the one who is in the wrong. So only order on something that you're confident that you could talk on. And I'm talking about the areas that have got different opinions, that you see wrong and you don't apply in your life. So, for example, in terms of the food you can eat, or the way that you pray, but you don't acknowledge the other madhahib, but for the other madhahib, they exist in Islam. So therefore, if you are not a person of knowledge in that particular area, don't speak on it. It's better not to. And when you're saying most of the people don't know their role, I think that stems from them not being close to their religion. Because I'm telling you, if I just recite now the many verses upon verses that no doubt a Muslim will come to the conclusion that that is my duty, it means that they have been away from their faith. And maybe in that sense, they need time to come to that actual fact. And what they need first is to activate faith. Because as I said, one of the ways that you will be able to be successful and to command goodness is to have faith. So faith has to be strengthened in them. And therefore, only the knowledgeable, only the people of faith are those who can. I can't be someone who's, la samahullah, committing, for example, adultery, and then coming and advising people on how important. It doesn't fall, it doesn't have an impact, it doesn't apply. And therefore, my faith and my conduct has to be one that fulfills the elements of faith, and I have to have knowledge. So therefore, whatever area if you know someone who can do a better job, so for example, I see someone doing something and I'm not so sure, either you refer them to someone who knows better. And I'm telling you, for example, the problem of homosexuality, okay, this is an issue that is growing, and I'm not saying in wider society, I'm speaking about Muslim community. And unfortunately, there's movements who are empowering this kind of movement or tendency, and using it as something to break at our faith. And for us, if you don't know how to deal with it or you don't understand it, you can't give advice. What you can do is you can refer to people of expertise, people of knowledge. And that, when you're talking about, coming back to your question, thinking the advice about our own families, that should happen from the beginning in your own household. And I go back to the point that I answered the first question with, which is from a young age, and I'm talking here even before 3 to 5 is an essential age where you start building in your children the love of Allah, not the fear, because what we do, Allah is going to throw you in hellfire. And how many times do we hear that? And children hate hellfire, and children hate the one who's going to throw them. They're scared. Why have we never concentrated on the love? Allah loves them. Allah will never throw any child in hellfire. So you're telling a lie when you tell a child, if you lie, Allah will throw. Never. That is a lie on your behalf. So what you have to do is create this positive relationship with Allah. And I've noticed this in the circles when I matured and I started to implement the love of Allah. Those are the strongest of souls. Even when they lose their way for a little bit, the connection with Allah remains and brings them back. But those who only grew up knowing halal, haram, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, they left, and they in their 40s now, and they've left totally, unfortunately, and they grew in families of mashallah good faith and good knowledge. So you've got to grow these seeds of loving Allah, connecting to Allah, direct them to just wonder, look at the sun, look at the skies, look at the creation, and recognize Allah's miracles. That is what you have to do in the first 7 years of a child's life. So a child, I have one of the children in my circle, and she started when she was 7, now she's 10. She looks up and she says, oh, I love Allah more every day. We want our children to say that, even if they don't pray, even for them, because this will bring on prayer. This will bring them closer to wanting to join good. The other thing is surround them with good company. The teenagers, if they don't have good company, if we don't have alternative companionship, how do we expect them to be something else? Of course, they're going to be similar to those around them. So it's very important to start really at the foundations of how to provide a good environment that will lead to, it's not thinking about how do we direct them, how to create an environment, because creating an environment is amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Tomorrow, if I open a youth club, without me even telling them, do this, don't do that. That environment, if I've got a certain program, a certain objective, that is the amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. I'm moving them away from the evil or the wrongdoing that they could find in community, and I'm bringing them to an area that will support them doing good. I'm creating this weekly circle that will allow them to do this. Even in my household, just sitting together and discussing a verse together. This is al-amr bil ma'ruf. Not you telling them off or saying you have to do this or you have to pray in that way, you have to pray 5 times. Not like that, not at all. And knowing, even I've got 3 girls, each one is totally different. I have my middle child who's totally different than the first or the youngest. So I have to cater to her needs. I have to see, because if I try to mold them, if I try to put them in my mold, fixed mold, I'll break them. I could break them. I could end up breaking them. But I have to realize what keys open their heart and their mind, and I have to use that. So you might treat your first one. My first one was very spiritual, very connected. My second one was different. It was hard for me to engage her, and I had to give her extra years and time and effort to keep her and to hold on to her. So this is how we should deal with it, flexibility, and starting from the roots, starting from creating those environments. This is part of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Sorry, I'll leave time just if someone else has the question.
Jazakallah khair for that. I hope that answers the question, inshallah. There's one more question. I think it'll be the last one. I'm conscious of time. It is 6 o'clock, but it actually leads on nicely to what you were just saying. And the question is by Sister Nuzhat Ahmed, who says, what do we do when the Islamic foundation is missing and that person is in their 20s? So you described sort of the teenagers or the younger years, but what about those who are slightly older? What if you've got children who are in their 20s and that Islamic foundation is missing? What do we do then?
Okay. There's no lost case. That is something that we have to firmly believe in. No one is a lost case. Even with people who you see totally away from faith, until the moment they die, there is a chance to bring them back. There might be resistance, and that is harder, of course, and that is why it's very important to start with someone from when they're young. But it doesn't mean that once they've grown and there's no way. Believe me, everyone, especially those who have people who care about them, there is an entrance. There is something that will touch them. You have to just see what is it that touches their heart. What is it that reminds them? Some people come by a targheeb, which is bringing them good news, good things about Islam, telling them good, for example, Jannah. And that is the way the Quran used, either mentioning the characteristics of those who believe and then the characteristics of those who disbelieve, the destiny of those who believe, the destiny of those who disbelieve, the description of Jannah, the description of Nar. Why? Because amongst us are people who abide by, a bit of threat. Be careful. If you do this, you're going to fall. Some people, if you don't do your homework, you're going to fail. So some people follow that approach. Others hate that approach. If you don't reward them, they don't like it. So it's better to tell them, if you finish, you will be able to go on to, I don't know, this university, or you're going to be rich. So this is the approach that they like. And you have to find what is it. Some people are spiritual, so you could come through the verses of the Quran. So for example, the end, using death, and some people hate that, by the way. As soon as you mention death, they switch off and they don't want, because we are naturally afraid of things that remind us of our faults. And when death is mentioned to someone who's not practicing, it scares them. So they don't want it to be mentioned. So the main thing is, I would say, just to wrap it up, is never give up. As long as you're thinking of them, you are on the way to help them. Find approaches, either, for example, just mentioning, I've noticed how many people are ignorant of the teachings in the hadith, the 40 hadith. So just, if they allow you to sit with them, because some don't even want that, if they allow you to sit with them and just discuss a hadith, or even if you know someone better than you who have an influence, try to find who has an influence. Is it a friend? Is it someone who you know will bring them goodness? And then work from that. Work on the things that they like to talk about. You know how many people are surprised by the beauty of verses? I've got my circle, and just yesterday we were talking about Surah Al-Nahl. One of the girls, we were on a webinar, and she switched off her camera and she started crying. She was saying, because I asked them all to reflect and to say something, she was crying. She was like, I never knew that the verses carry so much comfort, so much promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He's there with us. Allah is there closest to you. Allah is all forgiving. Allah will, if you come to Him walking, He will rush to you. All those meanings are not activated. So maybe if we start to think about that individual's entrance or entry point, so we could reach out. The final thing I would tell all of you, which is immensely important, and it's helped with me so much with bringing up my children, ad-du'a. Do not neglect the power of dua, and especially a mother's dua. No matter how much you plan and you think you're good and you can do good, without the dua, you're powerless. And let me tell you something. When you feel powerless and you turn to Allah and you say, oh Allah, I entrust this person, I entrust my child with you. Protect him in his faith, in all his affairs. In each sajda, I used to say this. Allah protects them. Allah protects their hearts. Even if they seem that they're lost for a bit, subhanallah, suddenly they can come back to you. So do not neglect the dua that you can make in your sujood, asking Allah. And what I used to do, I used to entrust Allah with each child. So I name each one of them. Allahumma inni stawda'tuka Asil. Allahumma inni stawda'tuka Sirin. Allahumma, each one of them, because I truly put my heart into it. And this is what we have to do. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the dua will empower us, will make our actions reach its objectives, inshallah. So that is something that I would definitely leave you with. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, empower us all and enable us to be of benefit to our households, to our children, to our brothers, sisters, communities, and to the organizations, and to wider society, and to our neighbors. Our vision is wider than just benefiting ourselves. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we come to on the day of judgment and we see mountains of goodness, and we think, where is it from? And they say, because one day you did this, and the people who followed, this is the reward that you're getting from that. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be amongst those who are examples of goodness, bi'idhnillah. And we pray that we are not, a means of testing others in their faith, bi'idhnillah, but encouraging them to tighten their connections with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Raghad. Unfortunately, our time has come to an end. We're already 7 minutes overdue. I could just listen to you speaking all day, mashallah, Sister Raghad. That was so encapsulating. I think, truly speaking, I think there is so much for every single age group to learn from what you've spoken about today, subhanallah. Jazakallah khair for your time. On behalf of UK Islamic Mission, we all thoroughly enjoyed that. And we thank you for taking the time out for this hour and 10 minutes of your, I know you're so busy, mashallah. So Jazakallah khair for sparing that time and, and committing your time to this for us and for the sake of Allah. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, enjoy the rest of your week. And inshallah, we hope to invite you really soon, and we hope we can be in the honor of your presence and listen to you speaking again. Jazakallah khair to all our attendees. Jazakallah khair for taking out the time for the sake of Allah to join us in this cause, inshallah, and may Allah always keep us united and protected under His mercy. Inshallah, next week it'll be the same time from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Next week the topic is life without devotion is a disgrace. Inshallah, we have another sister conducting that for us, so you don't want to miss it. Inshallah, until next week, everybody, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Raghad. Assalamu alaikum, everybody else.